So a couple of days ago we put the question out on our Instagram, Facebook and Twitter asking if you'd like to see the difference between expensive skates versus cheaper skates. From the response we got, we knew this was going to be a video that we had to put out. So let's get into it. For this example right here, we have the Bauer Vapor range. We're going to be looking at their top end skate, which is the 1X LEs, limited edition, versus the X200s, which are their entry level pair of skates. So these are completely two opposite spectrums. Going to be showing you what the difference is between them. Now the difference between more expensive and cheaper skates can be split into three categories. The first one is going to be stiffness or support that the skate's structure offers. The second one is going to be materials that skate's constructed from. And the third one is going to be features. So that starting off with the first one was stiffness and support that you get from the skates. Now if we look at the 1Xs, which are the top end skate from Bauer's Vapor range, versus the X200s, which are the entry level point, the stiffness in the 1Xs is going to be much greater than the X200s. These are going to be incredibly stiff compared to the X200s, and we're talking about the actual structure of the skate, the upper or the quarter package. Now the reason for that is because different levels of play and different builds of hockey players require different levels of support and stiffness on the ice from the skates that they're wearing. A good way of thinking about that is higher or advanced levels of play require a stiff skate. The reason for that is because the skate itself is put under a lot of tension, a lot of stress, just based off of the way that you skate, not even considering blocking shots or stick slashes, which means that the skate needs to be a little bit more protective to keep you going on the ice. Just off of the way that you skate, your stops and starts, your turns are going to be incredibly aggressive, and you need a supportive, stiff and rigid skate to be able to support you, to allow you to skate aggressively on the ice. Now, on the flip side, if you were to think about having a softer skate, if you needed to stop very suddenly or turn very aggressively, the structure of the skate, if it's incredibly soft, would just buckle and collapse when you're trying to turn or just basically perform on the ice. That's why you need a stiff and rigid structure of a skate to support you in an advanced level of play. Now, at the same time, it's not just the level of play or your own ability that dictates which level of skates you need to go for. It's also your build. You might be a beginner. That doesn't mean that you need to go for an entry-level pair of skates. You need to consider how much you're going to be using the skates and your build. Not only your ability comes into question when you're buying skates. It's those 3 points: ability, build, and how much you're going to be using the skates, the amount of use they'll get per week. So if you're a beginner, but you're incredibly built, incredibly heavy, these kinds of skates would collapse just off of you putting them on and maybe taking a couple of strides. You need to look away from the entry-level skates and towards the higher intermediate and top-end skates, which are going to be much stiffer and offer you the correct level of support that you need to be able to skate properly and perform to the best of your ability on the ice. Next on the list was materials. Now both of these skates, although again from the same range, are going to be constructed from entirely different materials, and that's probably where the biggest portion of the price difference between these two skates is found. Now when we look at the entry-level skates, which are the cheaper skates over here, the X200s, these are going to be constructed, when we're talking about the uppers, mainly from nylons and synthetic leathers, which is why the skate structure is so soft. Now when we look at skates like the 1Xs, LEs in this case over here, these are going to be constructed from mainly carbon composites or carbon fibers, which makes the skate incredibly rigid, stiff, but most importantly lightweight, and that's what an advanced level of play requires. It's really easy to show the difference between the stiffnesses. I can literally show you just by picking up the boot, the X200s in this case, and squeezing the structure of the skate. You can see how soft that is. It's incredibly soft. It doesn't take much energy to be able to squeeze the skate completely, and I can make the eyelets basically touch themselves. That's how soft the structure of that skate is. Now if we compare that to the 1Xs over here, this is as hard as I can squeeze the skate, and you can see the structure of the skate barely moves. That's just a quick indication of how different the stiffness is between these two boots over here. When we look at the differences in materials, it's pretty much featured throughout the entire structure of the skates. Although both of the steels or runners on these skates are going to be constructed from steel, the grade of steel that's used is completely different. The 1Xs will feature the LS4, which is going to be a premium quality steel. So things like rust, corrosion, it's going to be able to fend those off very well. You're not going to notice any rust buildup. You probably have to actively try and abuse your skates to maybe see some rust buildup on those runners on the 1Xs. But when we look at the X200s, it is stainless steel, but it's not going to be as high a grade. So it wouldn't be as effective as combating rust and corrosion. Now when we look at the holders, again there's a difference there. Both of these holders are constructed from two different plastics. You can actually see a difference in the color of plastic that's used to construct both of these two holders. Now, again, the 1Xs, it's going to be designed to be incredibly lightweight, still rigid and supportive to give you a good level of energy transfer, so it's a nice responsive skate. Whereas the X200s, it's going to be slightly softer, a little bit more heavy, because it's not going to be constructed from the same premium materials. Same is said for the outsole of these two skates. When we look at the X200s, this is going to be constructed from a plastic, whereas the 1Xs on my right is going to be constructed from a carbon fiber, carbon composite, which makes it incredibly lightweight, very, very stiff and rigid again, which are all of the features that you look out for on a top-end pair of skates. And again, this is where you see that difference in price because of the different materials that are used to construct it. We can also see differences in the materials that are used to construct both of these skates' tongues. When we look at the X200s, again, you're going to be getting that nylon finish on the outside of the tongues as well as some synthetic leathers, but it's going to be fairly thin. So if you're going to be skating very aggressively, you might start to get some pinching at the top of the foot, lace bite in other words, because this tongue isn't really designed to have a lot of forward flexion and protect very well against lace bite. But whereas we look at the 1Xs over here, you're going to have a nice curved composite insert in front of the tongue over there to act as a metatarsal guard, lace bite protector, or also offer additional support against stick slashes, puck shots, anything like that. This is where you start to see the quality difference between the way these two skates have been constructed. The 1X's tongue is also going to be significantly thicker, so you're able to get much better forward flexion out of the tongue, but at the same time you're not going to be compromising on your comfort while you're inside these skates. So that last point was features. Now when we look at the 1Xs over here, some of the features that you're going to get with these that you're not going to see on the lower end skates or the entry level skates is going to be things like the light speed edge trigger system on the holder. Now that allows you to switch out your steel in just a couple of seconds. So you get a dull blade or you break a steel, you can change it out in just a couple of seconds without having to go in through the boot, removing footbeds, drilling holes to be able to get access to the blade. So again, that's convenience and it really does help. So another feature is going to be that injected stability lacing system, which is something that you're not going to see on those entry-level skates. It effectively reduces all of these materials over here, so you have a lot of different synthetic leathers and nylons all stitched together to construct the eyelets of the skates, including the actual eyelets themselves, which can be made from plastic or metal. Now, the injected stability lacing system is just one piece, one solid piece, which means it's much lighter, a lot more durable. Less pieces means more durability, and it also adds a lot more forward flex. So a player's going to get a greater range of motion and allow themselves to push themselves in these skates that much harder to get that much more speed out of every stride that they take on the ice. So aside from all of the external differences and features on these skates, we're also going to be taking a look inside the skates to show you some of the things that manufacturers will change inside the skates when you compare entry-level skates to the top-end ones. First one is going to be this area of the skate over here that I like to refer to as the neck. Now with these ones over here, a lot of the top-end skates will feature a comfort pad or comfort supporting along the neck of the skate, which basically helps to alleviate pressure at one point. So when you're turning aggressively or sharply, you don't have to worry about the sides or the neck of the skate digging into the top of your foot. Now also, you're going to have a big difference between the liners inside the actual boots. With top-end skates, they're going to use premium materials, so you get premium liners inside here. This particular one is Bauer's 37.5 liner. The way this works is that it uses the player's heat to help evaporate the moisture and sweat that builds up inside this skate. So the harder you work, the more you sweat, the more heat you produce, the better these liners are going to work at keeping you dry by evaporating that moisture. Now this isn't a gimmick, this actually does work. The 37.5 liners are what I have on my base layers, and I can vouch for it. This stuff is fantastic. You're not going to get features like this inside the entry-level skates. You're going to get a simple antimicrobial liner that's been treated to help fight bacteria and odor buildup. But aside from that, it's just going to be a very standard liner inside there, no additional features. Another thing that you'll look out for on top-end skates is these high wear areas around here, just at the top of where the eyelets end. This is one of the high abrasion areas where your foot is constantly going back and forth as you're striding, so this gets worn away over time. Now what Bauer do with these particular skates, and so do all of the other manufacturers when you look at their top-end skates, is they add this wear protection over here. So this basically combats the breaking down of the liners inside these skates by beefing up the liners, especially the areas that receive a little bit more abuse. Again, these are features that you're not going to find on your entry-level skates because the level of skating, the level of performance that these skates are targeted towards doesn't require these features. So if you think that you're going to need these features, it's when you have to consider moving up that ladder. Last but least, we have the footbeds of both of these skates. Now the ones over here are for the X200s. This is just going to be a very standard footbed, foams on the bottom, brush nylon liner on the base. There's nothing special about this one, not even stiff at all. It's very, very soft, very flimsy. But if we look at the ones that you get with the 1Xs, these are Bauer's speed plates. Now what these are much stiffer footbeds that are thermoformable. These will go into the skate oven when your skates get baked. And when your foot goes into them after the skates have been baked, these will also wrap and contour to the shape of the bottom of your foot. Now the reason for that is because these will help to increase the amount of surface area that is in contact with the base of the skate. So if you can put more of your foot in contact with the base of the skate, not only are you going to have better stability and better balance, but you're also going to have a much more responsive skate and a much more better fitting skate, and that's exactly what these footbeds do. The way I like to think about the differences between these skates is with cars. Now if you're, for example, to look at a Nissan Micra versus a Nissan GTR, also known as a Skyline, the differences between these two cars is phenomenal. They're both cars, they're both made by the same manufacturer, they both have 4 wheels, doors and a steering wheel, and they'll both get you from A to B. But the way that they get you from A to B is completely different. One is created for aggressive driving, performance, lightweight, speed, whereas the other one is simply designed to get you from A to B. That's a good way to think about these types of skates, both made by the same people, technically have a similar name, but they are made for 2 completely different uses and different players. So hopefully this video was helpful. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button down below. Let us know what else you'd like to see. If there's any other comparisons or any other products you want us to compare to give you information about the differences, post them down below, or any other videos you want us to shoot. Thanks for watching. Make sure that you follow all of our social pages. Links will be down below. Check out the other videos that we'll have popping along the screen along the sides there. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and take care till next time. The decision of which skates you want to go with should have nothing to do with what they look like. First and foremost should be the fit. Right off the back of that should be the comfort. And then next is going to be the support.